Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is CJ, and today I want to go over some of the super investors that I follow and the changes that they made to their portfolio in the fourth quarter of 2020. Today I'm going to cover some of the changes in 4 different portfolios. And those investors are Li Lu, Spier, Michael Burry, and David Tepper. I would normally add Monish Pabrai to this list, but he didn't make any changes for the fourth quarter. I tend to follow these super investors pretty closely because they all run concentrated portfolios, and I'm really only interested in looking at portfolios where the managers have very high conviction, which is about a 10% bet or more of their portfolio. I plan on doing these every quarter, so if you want to keep up to date, please subscribe to the channel. There will be timestamps in the description below for the 4 portfolios that I'll cover in this video, so go check those out if you want to skip to a specific one. And this isn't investment advice. Frankly, a lot of these changes I am learning myself. With all that said, let's get started. Did you know that value investors get 4 extra holidays every year? These holidays are better than Christmas, Thanksgiving, and the 4th of July all combined. Big funds have to file a 13F form with the SEC where they disclose all of their positions that they've acquired within the past fiscal quarter. To track most of this information, I use the website Dataroma, where it lists all of the major super investor portfolios. So here we see we have Warren Buffett, Howard Marks, Bill Miller, Li Lu, Michael Burry, etc., etc. Also keep in mind that Dataroma only reports US held positions, so a lot of these investors do actually hold positions in foreign countries like Japan or China or Turkey, and these will not be listed or represented on Dataroma. For instance, Michael Burry has positions in Japan and Korea that aren't reported on Dataroma or to the SEC, so his overall portfolio is bigger, and that should slightly decrease the total percentages of these positions compared to his total pool of assets. Okay, let's start with Li Lu. First off, we can see that his Micron position has not changed, nor has his Bank of America. Interesting, he has reduced his Facebook position by about 30%. Monish Pabrai says that there's one reason why an investor would buy a stock, but there are millions of reasons why they might sell. So this is a 30% reduction in his Facebook holdings. As we can see, it's still about 15% of his US portfolio. So I wouldn't say that he's losing faith in Facebook as a business. I think it's more along the lines of he wants to make room for new positions in his portfolio. Google's unchanged, and here we get to the interesting part. So we have a 5.5% stake in his US portfolio for Apple, and then a 3.5% stake in Pinduoduo. I put this spreadsheet together to kind of track the changes for these portfolios that I'm tracking right now. And for me, the most important part is the percent change in price. So we can see that for Facebook, he sold it off, but for Apple and Pinduoduo, I like to track the lowest price that they could have bought it. I kind of just assumed that these great investors were able to buy it at the lowest price that it was available during the quarter. So here I have listed for Apple at about 109 and then Pinduoduo at about 72. Understanding the lowest price during the quarter kind of gives us a reference for the minimum threshold for what these super investors might be willing to pay for these companies. So for instance, if Li Lu did buy Pinduoduo at $72 per share, and then we see that the last day of the quarter it was selling for almost $180, he has already made about 150% return on that investment. Now again, we can't read Li Lu's mind, but we can probably assume based on his past track record that he is not holding Pinduoduo for a quick turnaround and just to buy it up and sell it just next quarter. So it looks like Li Lu found it interesting at somewhere between $72 per share and about $180 per share. I'm guessing he probably bought it at the lower end of that, but if you're looking for sort of an acceptable price range based on what the super investors are doing, this is kind of one method to look at it. Some interesting things about these portfolio changes is that Li Lu bought into Apple, which is the company with the largest market cap in the world. I find it really interesting because he's buying a new position when Apple is hitting all-time highs. So I'd be really curious to figure out what he thinks is going to happen to the stock. Does he think it can possibly double again from here? It's already valued over $2 trillion, but I am not trying to second guess Li Lu here. I'm quite impressed that he still thinks that there's a lot of value, enough value to put 5% of his portfolio into it. Next up is Pinduoduo, which I haven't done a ton of research about this company, but it's a Chinese e-commerce platform, and they cater more to the lower end of the market, and they have a lot of concentration in more rural and sparse cities. It was interesting, a few quarters ago, Lilu sold all of his stake in Alibaba, and now he's making another small investment in an up-and-coming e-commerce competitor. Pinduoduo is supposedly taking a lot of market share from Alibaba at that lower end of the market. So Pinduoduo is going straight to the top of my list of stocks to research next. Even though Lilu has captured a double already, there's potential that there's a lot of upside left. Okay, next let's move on to Guy Spier's portfolio. He runs a pretty concentrated book as well, and he didn't actually have many changes for this quarter, but I did want to cover his one change, which was he added to his position in Micron Technology. Micron is a producer of memory and data storage solutions, most notably their DRAM. So Guy Spier initially made about a 2%-ish bet on Micron Technologies, but we've seen Monish Pabrai and Lilu both have a huge portion of their portfolios dedicated to Micron. So it looks like Guy Spier did some more due diligence, did his research, probably talked to Monish a lot more about Micron, and ended up pulling the trigger because he added about 67% to his previous position. So the quarter low was about $47 and the last day price was 75. So he's already captured about a 62% upside. I'm guessing though that like Pabrai and like Lilu, he's planning on holding this for a long time. But if you're thinking about getting on board with Micron, these are a few statistics that might help you think about price ranges, because Guy Spier obviously thought it was acceptable to buy in at somewhere between 47 and 75. Again, I'm guessing he bought in on the lower end, but now the position makes up almost 15% of his portfolio, which is a really high conviction bet. Okay, that's all for Guy Spier, but that gives some hope for Micron. Okay, next up we have the big short himself, Michael Burry. Burry made a ton of changes to his portfolio this quarter, but I'm gonna go over just a few of the big ones that I noticed. As you can see, he made 9 new buys, and if we go to his sell tab, then we can see that he sold another 10 positions completely. So he was busy last quarter. So first up is his largest position, which is Lumen Technologies. It makes up about 8% of his total US portfolio. And Lumen is actually CenturyLink, which is a telecoms communication. They just changed their name at the end of last year to Lumen. So he added 44% to his largest position, which gives us a taste for how much of conviction he feels for this company. I don't know anything about it, to be honest, but I'm sure if we dig into the balance sheet, we would find an opportunity that Burry sees. Next up in his portfolio, we have a new position called Distribution Now. This makes up almost 8% of his portfolio. Now, I know nothing about Distribution Now other than a few minutes of research on it, but according to Morningstar, they provide downstream energy and industrial products for petroleum refining, chemical processing, LNG terminals, power generation utilities, industrial manufacturing operations, etc. So the first thing I do when I see a new position that I've never seen before is I go immediately to Morningstar and check out their balance sheet. So if we look at their balance sheet for the third quarter of 2020, you can see that they have about $330 million in cash, and their debt number is about $0.05 billion. So if you subtract the net debt from their total cash, they still have $270 million on the balance sheet with no obligation to anybody else. This is a really good sign and an important factor when deciding if they have a healthy balance sheet or not. Most companies do not have enough cash on hand to cover their debt, and this company has an excess of cash right now. We can kind of go from there to start to analyze if we think this company is still undervalued or if Burry might have already sold by now. So as of today, we can see that the market cap for the company is about $1.2 billion. So if we subtract their net cash after debt, that's about $900 to $950 million market cap minus cash. So just based on the cash on the balance sheet alone, we're getting a 4.5 multiple. So once we understand this, we can kind of evaluate the rest of the business. So at first glance, this stock does seem to be pretty undervalued because it has a healthy balance sheet, a lot of cash, and it has an operating business that has potential to be making money in a cyclical industry that seems to be on another upswing. But this isn't going to be a full analysis of this company. That's just my cursory thoughts. You really need to dive into the 10Ks and do some extra research to figure out if this company still has a lot more value to offer for you. And I can't say whether or not it's too late and if you missed the value on this one, but we'll just have to wait and see. Okay, then some of the few key sales that Burry made was number one, GameStop. So we know that he sold his entire position before the giant run up to, what was it, $400 or $500 per share. It seems like he still made about a 4x on his bet in about, I don't know, a year and a half. So he did pretty well for himself. He did, however, miss the peak, but you can't blame him, man. It's 4x. That's an outstanding return anyway. He even admitted that what was going on with GameStop with the short squeeze or gamma squeeze was unnatural. So I don't think he was too sad about missing out on that upside. Next, this one surprised me. Facebook, he sold 100% of it. It went from being one of the largest positions in his portfolio to 0%. Now, like I said earlier, there could be a million reasons why someone would sell a stock, but in Burry's Twitter profile, he has hashtag boycott Facebook. So I don't think that he thinks too highly of the company just from a moral standpoint. He may be voting with his portfolio by not investing in Facebook, even if he does think that the business itself is going to grow a lot in the future, because clearly he made a large bet on it before. It's possible that his conviction has changed, his outlook on the business has changed, but it also could be due to something else. I really don't know. This is all pure speculation. Let me know if you have any other thoughts about what could possibly be motivating Burry to sell his Facebook stake. Okay, finally, let's go over David Tepper's portfolio changes. Dataroma shows that he has 45 positions, but if we look at the concentration within the top 5 or so, we can see that he actually has made a lot of high conviction bets. Now, the ones in particular I want to cover are Amazon, Micron, and Facebook. So what surprised me the most about Tepper's portfolio changes were his changes to Amazon. So he added almost 40% to his current stake in Amazon, bumping that up to about a 9.5% concentration in his portfolio. This kind of blows my mind. It's a little bit like Li Lu's investment in Apple. Amazon is one of the largest companies in the world, and Tepper still thinks that there's a lot of value to be captured within the company. Now, Amazon is obviously huge and complicated. It has a ton of different businesses within it. And this investment was made before Jeff Bezos announced that he was stepping down as CEO. I don't know if one of the greatest businessmen of all time stepping down as CEO is going to change Tepper's view of Amazon, but that one we'll just have to see. This is one of those spawner companies that Monish Burry has talked about, and hopefully the genetic DNA of Amazon will keep it going and growing for a long time in the future, even if Bezos isn't at the helm. Next up, Tepper sold off about 35% of his stake in Micron. Now, I believe that Tepper was the person who initially introduced Monish Burry to Micron, and I'm really surprised he's selling off this much. Where on one hand, we have guy Spier, who's adding 66% to his stake, and Tepper's selling 35%. And in the middle, we have Burry and Li Lu, who are both holding steady with their huge positions in Micron. Micron still makes up 9% of his portfolio, so maybe he just doesn't like positions to get too large. He's already captured a lot of value with Micron, so we'll see if this is a mistake or, if he's just trying to rebalance a little bit. And finally, we see Tepper adding about 14% to his Facebook position. So I wanted to cover this because it's in contrast to Li Lu and Michael Burry both selling off a little bit of Facebook. It's just to point out that just because one investor is selling a position doesn't mean that it's not a good position to hold. A bunch of different value investors within the community think really highly of certain stocks, while others think that they're terrible investments. That's a pretty common dynamic, so don't take one person's portfolio change as gospel. That about rounds up my summary for the Q4 changes in some of the super investors' portfolios that I follow. Of course, this wasn't a comprehensive view of every single stock change in every single investor's portfolio, but I have selected some of the more interesting ones to me. So please go to dataroma.com if you want to check out any other investors on your own. I'd highly recommend it. Since you made it this far, you may be interested in my curated investing playlist over here, where I cover a bunch of topics in value investing. If you like this video, please subscribe to the channel. It would help me a lot, and let me know to keep making videos like this in the future. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions or comments about any companies or portfolio positions or investors that I did or didn't cover in this video. Thank you for watching, everybody, and I will see you next time.